Imagine this. You're standing on a crowded escalator, shoulder to shoulder with dozens of excited football fans. The air is electric, chants echo through the underground station, and everything feels perfectly normal. But then, in just a few seconds, the escalator beneath your feet turns into a runaway machine of steel, throwing people forward, crushing bodies at the bottom, and twisting metal into jagged blades. This isn't a movie scene or some urban legend. It really happened on October 23rd, 2018, in Rome. What was supposed to be a routine ride down to the subway turned into one of the most terrifying accidents in the history of escalators. The big question is, how could something as ordinary as an escalator, a machine millions of us trust every single day, suddenly become a death trap? And maybe more importantly, was this really a failure of technology or a failure of people? That evening, around 7 o'clock, about 50 people stepped onto the long escalator at Republica Station. Within a single minute, the crowd had tripled. The enormous weight pressed down on the moving steps, pushing the main motor close to its limit. Now, escalators are designed with 3 separate layers of protection. First, the motor itself adjusts torque to resist sudden changes. Second, a primary brake clamps down on the drum to stop the descent. And third, an emergency brake locks directly onto the drive shaft, basically the nuclear option. On paper, the odds of all 3 failing at the same time are vanishingly small. But on that October night, every single one failed. When the primary brake engaged, tests later showed its friction force was barely 37% of the manufacturer's specification. It simply wasn't strong enough. When the auxiliary brake triggered, investigators discovered that one of the 2 steel wedges had been tied shut with nothing more than a plastic strap. That meant half the braking power was gone. With the brakes compromised, the escalator accelerated like a runaway train. Fans at the top were flung forward, others tried to leap over the center barrier, and dozens were crushed into a pile at the bottom. Metal steps twisted and bent under the stress. In total, 24 people were injured. And this raised an alarming suspicion. This wasn't just bad luck. Something about the machine had been deliberately tampered with. The authorities immediately shut down Republica Station, sealing off the site for months. Both a technical commission and a criminal inquiry were launched. Investigators dismantled the escalator piece by piece, determined to find out what had gone wrong. The final 86-page report revealed something shocking. The error logs inside the machine, the automatic record of malfunctions, had been switched off. Critical alerts could occur without leaving a trace. The only way that was possible was if someone had deliberately reprogrammed the system. Maintenance records were equally suspicious. Large repairs were missing entirely from the paperwork. The trail of evidence pointed back to June 2017, when maintenance duties were handed over to a contractor called Metro Roma. But the probes soon revealed that Metro Roma wasn't acting alone. The Transit Authority itself, ATAC, was complicit. By September 2019, prosecutors named 11 suspects, including 3 ATAC managers and the chief of Metro Roma. Public outrage exploded when a wiretap recorded one ATAC manager saying, almost casually, "If you run the numbers, out of 700 escalators, 3 or 4 more could drop." Come on. He didn't seem to care that real people might be standing on those machines. The conclusion was clear. This wasn't an engineering failure. It was a moral one. But to really understand why escalators have so many layers of safety, we need to rewind more than a century. In 1896, Jesse Reno built the very first moving escalator at Coney Island. He called it the continuous elevator. It wasn't even stairs, just a metal conveyor belt tilted at a 25-degree angle. It carried people up about 7 feet before they had to walk back down on the other side. The ride was a hit. More than 75,000 people tried it in just 2 weeks. But Reno noticed something. Nobody walked. Everyone stood still, clutching the handrail, too nervous to move. 2 years later, the famous Harrods department store in London installed a similar device. It unsettled customers so much that the store actually stationed staff at the top to hand out brandy to men and smelling salts to women, just to calm their nerves. The problem was obvious. At around 12 degrees, it becomes difficult to walk on an incline. At 25 degrees, you're basically at the limit of what human ankles can handle. People couldn't use the device the way Reno imagined. The solution was simple in concept but hard in practice. Replace the conveyor with actual moving stairs. That breakthrough came from inventor George Wheeler. He designed each step to be attached to a chain by a rotating axle, with 2 sets of guiding wheels. One track kept the steps level as they climbed upward. At the top, the tracks split apart, allowing the steps to flip upside down, tuck into the loop, and begin their return journey. This clever geometry solved the problem of having a flat surface to stand on, while still allowing the steps to cycle endlessly. Unfortunately, Wheeler couldn't commercialize the idea. It was Charles Seeberger who later bought the patent, teamed up with the Otis Elevator Company, and presented a working prototype at the Paris Exposition in 1900. More than 51 million visitors saw the marvels of modern technology that year, and one of the most popular attractions was Otis's new escalator. French historian Philippe Julien even called it the jolliest attraction, describing how families were separated, old men stumbled, children laughed, and nannies despaired. The escalator won one of the fair's grand prizes. From that point, escalators spread worldwide. But early designs weren't exactly safe. The steps were smooth and flat, disappearing under wooden boards at the top. Shoelaces, coats, and especially the long skirts of the era were easily snagged. In one case, a 3-year-old girl had her foot pinched in the gap. Designers needed a fix, and fast. The first fix was clumsy, a triangular shunt that forced riders to step off sideways before reaching the dangerous gap. It worked, but awkwardly. Imagine stepping with one foot on solid ground while the other is still moving. It caused chaos when some stood still and others tried to walk. The real breakthrough came with the grooved step and the comb plate. The grooves interlocked perfectly with the plate at the top, lifting small items up and out of harm's way. No more dangerous gap. In 1982, engineers added another safety feature, the skirt brush. Those little bristles along the side? They aren't for decoration. They nudge shoes, clothing, or bags away from the edge, preventing them from getting trapped. Then there's the handrail. Reno had already guessed people would want something to hold onto, but modern escalators took it further. The handrail actually moves about 2% faster than the steps. Why? Because friction wears down the wheel that drives the belt. If the speeds matched exactly, the handrail would slowly lag behind over time. By making it slightly faster, engineers compensate for wear. Next time you're on an escalator, put your hand next to you and watch it'll drift forward, proof of that little engineering trick. And here's one of the coolest facts. Modern downward escalators can actually generate electricity. With enough people riding down, their combined weight drives the chain, turning the motor into a generator. This regenerative braking feeds power back into the building, sometimes even powering the upward escalators. So, escalators aren't just safe, they're also energy efficient. Which brings us back to Rome. Despite all this engineering brilliance, all these layers of redundancy, the escalator at Republica still failed because the very people responsible for keeping it safe had sabotaged it. Brakes were disabled, records falsified, error logs turned off. And that's the real lesson. Technology can be brilliantly designed, but it only works if people maintain it with honesty and care. Escalators today are built to handle forces far greater than they'll ever face. One engineer put it simply, you could put an elephant on a step and it wouldn't break. With 1.5 million escalators worldwide carrying more than 100 billion rides every year, catastrophic failures are almost unheard of. But when negligence enters the picture, even the safest system can become a ticking time bomb. So, was the Rome disaster a technological failure or a human one? Personally, I think the answer is obvious. And maybe that's a message that goes far beyond escalators. Whether it's bridges, airplanes, subways, or even the internet you're watching this video on, our systems rely on us, on people, on maintenance, responsibility, and sometimes just the basic willingness to care about the safety of others. Back in university, Jesse Reno had to climb more than 300 steps every day just to get to his fraternity house. While everyone else complained, he actually solved the problem. He invented the very first escalator. So next time you step onto one of those moving staircases, remember, behind that smooth ride lies not just clever engineering, but also the responsibility of people you'll never meet. And if they do their job right, you'll never even notice. What do you think? Is technology only as good as the people maintaining it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed uncovering the hidden science and history behind something as ordinary as an escalator, make sure to hit subscribe to Why Is That Lab. Because the everyday world is full of extraordinary secrets, just waiting to be uncovered,